traveling about 2.5 hours away because I found a retailer that carries all the solar racking parts in stock and they're open to the public. A lot of times those places only sell to distributors or to installers, and they're not open. You can just walk in and get what you need. So anyways, I'm heading up there now to grab that. That's going to save me on freight or in the shipping and everything else. They're also a lot cheaper. So we used to live in this city several years ago, and this is why we don't live here anymore. This sucks. Still here, putting along. It's been like this for too long. The only traffic jams we have in the country is getting stuck behind a combine. Yeah, I'm free. I look over into the other traffic lane and they're in a traffic jam too. Oh, it sucks. Okay, I just left the warehouse. Gotta head down. Just left the warehouse and got my goods. And now you can see back there, we got a whole trailer full of the rails back there. So we're good to go. I was originally online. It was going to be about 3,300, I think. 3,400. So I ended up getting everything plus an additional 105 rails, which I'm going to try and resell or use for another project. And it cost me about an extra $1,300 or $1,400. And if I can turn around and sell those rails, I should make around $1,000 on it. That's before taking into account the 26% tax write-off, which we will get 100% at. So the tax write-off is 100% off your taxes. Well, if you don't need taxes, you don't get anything out of it. We owe taxes every year. We're self-employed, so even though we pay our quarterly estimated, we're always paying taxes every year. So we'll definitely get that full 26% back, which is always nice. So I got a heck of a deal on that. Okay, now that I finally got my racking stuff, I can start getting it up on the roof. I haven't got all of the inverters and everything wired up yet, but I want to get the racking on. So what I'm doing up here, I have everything drawn up in CAD, so I had a good idea of how far off the edge I needed to be. So there's where my first bracket's going to be, right where I drilled in here. So these are the brackets I'm using. These are IronRidge flush mount brackets. So this slips up underneath the shingle. And the nice thing about it is it's not really long where I'm going to hit a nail. I may hit one or two along the way, but right now it looks like it's going to work out just fine. So my panels are 5.5 feet long or tall and about 36 inches wide, or so 34.5, something like that. So I measured off the bottom, measured up my 15 inches, and this is going to stand out the roof, so it's not going to be right on that seam. It's going to stick out a little bit. Overall, I'm going to have 2 inches of play between the top and the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and line it up on the bottom, and at the top it'll be 2 inches off. Okay, so here we are on the inside of the roof, and right here is where my drill bit came through, and I'm right centered in between these two rafters. So what you're supposed to do is drill directly into the center of the rafter, but I've got to find that center of the rafter from the outside and hope I hit every single one correctly. The problem with that is that I'm looking for an 1.5 inch space in a span of shingles, and not all of these rafters, especially as I get up higher, are going to be perfectly straight. So I can't go from one, measure over 4 foot, and be guaranteed I'm going to hit the next one. So what I'm going to do is, since this is all open, I'm going to take a 2x6, I'm going to cut it to length in between every rafter. I'm going to measure every one to make sure I get it nice and tight. 3 nails in each side, 3 nails in each side, and then my screw will go through everything into that 2x6 that's nailed in. So that's my plan, but what I can do here on the inside as I can know, there's my first one. So I go 4 feet down would be this one, and then 4 feet down would be that one. So I can come through here on the inside and I can nail all those in. Now, instead of looking for a 1.5 inch strip, I'm going to be hitting a 5.5 inch piece of wood that is, you know, a full 6 or 14.5 inches wide, and then plus my 2 2x4s. So I shouldn't have any issues with missing my brackets on the inside, my nailers. One down, 83 to go. Okay, back to have to put that one in. You can see we're just barely, not even a 1/2 inch, barely poking through there. And I think I lined that sucker up just about perfect. I'm just almost dead near in the middle center of that. So to help me line these up, I'm going to go down 3 or 4 at a time, and then I'm going to run a string line along them to make sure that they're straight up and down. So these are a couple end pieces. I had to cut, they come in 11-foot sticks, the ones that I got, and I had to cut a couple of them down to 9 foot, so I've got these 2-foot pieces here. So the first thing is the flashing. Now usually it has a rounded edge. It comes about 2 inches taller on this. This one got cut down for whatever reason, so I'm using it as an example. The reason why I like these IronRidge ones is, if you can see on the back there, right there, you can see that sticks out a little bit farther than the actual flashing. So when you screw this down to your roof into the shingles, that actually presses into the shingle and creates a nice seal. And they also suggest that you put caulking around that hole, which is actually kind of difficult because you're slipping it under a shingle and then you have to pull this up and try and get caulking under there. It doesn't work very well. Now the way they suggest to do it is to drill a pilot hole, pull it out, put the caulking in there, slide it back up in there. But the way I was looking at it, all it would do is just smear the caulking all over the place. So I didn't use it on my application. This has so many different watertight features. It's a pretty good product. So the first one I noticed is that this sticks out farther than the flashing itself, which will press down into your shingle and help to make a seal there. And remember, your shingles are also overlapping this, so no water should actually get back behind there. The only part where I saw where it might get behind there is if you had 2 shingles that came to a seam and you had one that was cut like this one was, and this part was below the seam. In that case, you could take some liquid flashing or some roofing caulking, roofing tar, and then seal over that seam. You're never going to notice it. So anyways, this gets centered onto your shingles on your roof where you want it to be at. Then this here is the lag bolt. You're going to screw this down into your rafter or truss. So once that's screwed in there nice and tight, then this piece turns and locks into place like that. This one is off a little bit, but I found that that's really not that big of a deal. And what's happening when it's off, you can see that's not quite squared. This will twist, or your whole flashing will twist when you tighten this down, and that's really not that big a deal. Again, ideally, I'm not sure why this one is off so much. This is the worst one I've seen. There it goes, it clicked in a little bit better. And then the next part that goes on would be your rail. So you need this little universal bolt here, slips in like that. Rail goes on here, and as it twists, this tightens down, and then you can adjust your elevation if your roof is warped a little bit. Now the one thing I noticed and had a problem with is if you can see how that twists in there and locks in when you tighten it. So there's tightened. I've had it several times where this gets stuck and it's not all the way tight, and you end up pulling this part out, or it's just barely on there. So I would suggest after you tighten everything down would be to go back through and just look up through this bracket here and make sure all of those are properly seated and locked in tight. And you're supposed to torque these down to, I think it's 20 or 21 foot-pounds. So if you have two pieces that come together, you need to get a splicer kit. There's this little guy right here. This is 12 inches long. So this just slides in there like so. Measure off 6 inches. Make sure when you screw this, you're holding this on, because as you're drilling in, this will vibrate. It sits there kind of loose. It'll start vibrating back and forth on you. So you hold that down. Then your kit comes with these self-tapping screws. So you hold it down, come off inch, inch and a half, put one, go off 2 inches, put another one. Come to the other side. Well, maybe not. That slips into there, and then you're going to again put your screw here, inch and a half or so off, go out 2 inches, put another screw in there, and that's all locked together. That locks in there like that, and you're done. This is an XR10 rail. And when you're looking at it on the internet, you think these are monstrously large rails. They're really not. This is only maybe an inch and a half, inch and 3/4 tall or so. But according to their specs, and I'll put that on here, this will support up to, at a 4-foot span, up to 160 mile an hour wind. With, I believe, a 40 or 60 pound snow load. So that's quite a lot. And here in Kansas, where I'm located at, we get tornadoes all the time. That's equivalent to an F2 tornado. And you know, you get hit by an F2 tornado, it's going to rip your roof off anyways. Now if you go up to the XR or XR100 rails, they're also rated up to that same 160 mile per hour wind. So really, I didn't see a difference in why I should pay more for a bigger rail when this one would do just the same thing. One thing I forgot too is these little caps that go on the end. They come in a bag of 10, and it's 10 sets. So you have a left side and a right side. You just push on there, and then you just smack them into place, and then just gives you a nice edge on there. I don't know if that's really necessary, like especially on these smaller rails. I guess you could get mud daubers maybe living in there, but I really can't see it's going to hurt a whole lot if you didn't have these on. I can see in the larger rails where this opening is bigger that it would make more sense to put the caps on. But in the XR10s, beyond giving it a nice, you know, finished look, may not be necessary. You can see my bald head now. I don't have a hat on. Well, getting pretty close. I got 3 rails up. It's fairly straight, I'd say. So the first one was a little wackadoo, but live and learn. It's pretty good. That first one's got a little bit of waviness to it, but you're not going to notice that. It's more of an issue of the width and your spacing. So the panels that I have are 66 inches, and the first section off is 15, and then 36, and then 15, and then same thing on the upper. So the distance between here is 36. That was supposed to be 30, but the way the shingles lined up, I had to make it, what, 32? So I'm hoping, now they'll give you a little bit of flexibility. You don't have to be exactly at 15. It's plus or minus about an inch, so you have a little bit of room there to fluctuate. But you're not supposed to have these hanging off the ends of the shingles. They're actually supposed to be more in the center like that one was. This one I had to push them up all the way up dang there to that top part. But I learned on the first one, that was a little better. I learned on the first one that you know, I'll put one in here, and then I go down probably about to maybe that one or that one, get it in straight, and then run a chalk line across to line up the rest of these. And then all I'd have to do is measure off. I put the tape on this corner to that corner was 32 on this first one, that one to that one was 48. So if I could, you know, I'd go here, extend down as far as I could. Now again, because the way we did this, I've got you know, 14.5 inches, I can be off, basically, or 7 1/4 if you count that I'm trying to shoot for the center of that 2x6 under there. So I wasn't too worried if I was off, you know, 1/4 inch here or there as far as where these were placed. The only ones that I tried to make sure I got correct were these first ones, but the only way I could figure out how to do that was to measure off that edge over there, and I'm not 100% sure that edge is exactly straight. So it'll be interesting to see when I get the panels up here how straight everything is. I'm leaving an extra couple inches on the length of the bars, so if anything I can shuffle everything over 1 inch, and then if I'm off, you know, 1/4 inch from top to bottom, you probably are not going to notice it. So I got this last bar is just sitting up on top. I've already put the splicing rails in. You're not supposed to have these dead set in the center. They're supposed to be closer to the brackets there. That's a good one right there. That one's about 6 inches off. So the problem with that is I don't know how you're supposed to decide or lay all this out. There's so much of our criteria you're supposed to meet. You know, shingles have to be so far apart, and if they're not, well then that's a problem. And you know, your splicers need to line up perfectly. Well, if your flash footings are put down and a 4-foot pattern, that doesn't make much sense because your sticks are 11 feet long. Well, that, you know, logic tells you that if it's 11 or 15 or well, they have 11, 15, 8.5, 17, 14. I mean, you're not going to line them suckers up every time. It's just impossible. And then they say you're supposed to screw these into a stud. You have a 4-foot span, a 6-foot span. Well, a 6-foot span doesn't even hit a rafter unless you're on 2-foot centers. So, I don't know, doing the best we can. I think the way we did it by putting that 2x6 on the back and nailing it into the side is really the way to go, because I've got so much flexibility. I can move these left or right if I need to. And I mean, they're going in pretty good and tight. In order to get up to that top rail, I can walk along these bottom two to get to the third one, then I'll walk on the next one to get to the fourth one. The next two rails, the last two on the top, is in a much shallower pitch. It'd be a lot easier to get around on up there. Real quick, I'll give you a little better explanation of how I'm doing this. So I measured from that next flashing down there over 12 feet. I took the little dimple there, and I just took the flashing and pushed it into the shingle to give me a little bit of a mark to line that up against. And then I'm going from the bottom of that flashing there, measuring up to the bottom of this flashing, and although I like to get 36, I'm only doing 30. I'm supposed to be at 36. I'm only doing 35.5, and that's because this is pushing into the shingle. I'm having to nip just a little bit off. I don't want to go up so far that I'm cutting a big chunk out, so a 1/2 inch is not that big of a deal. So I'll push that down to 35.5. Then I'll go ahead and screw this one in, and then I'll run a chalk line from this bottom edge down to that next bottom edge, and that will tell me where to line up the rest of them. That way I don't have to measure them. So as you can see, those ones I've already done are nice and straight. The first row is always the hardest because what are you going to measure off of? I mean, you're measuring off of a shingle edge, which is never straight, so it makes it a little hard to get that first one on there. But I don't have too much farther to go, and then I'll have all my rails in. Just went back and checked the eggs. Got some eggs for dinner. We lost one of our chickens last night. Disappeared. How it goes. So today I made some good progress. We got all of our brackets up on the roof. And I hear a very noisy kitty coming. What are you doing? This is a pretty cool cat. He likes to ride on my shoulders and has a very interesting purr. Anyways, got my brackets up. Look pretty good from the ground. And they get up right up in there, and you can see the mistakes and fluctuations, but all in all, it looks pretty good. So there'll be 2 rows on the steeper side and 1 row on the upper side. So the bottom row will be on one charge controller, and then the next row will be on the next charge controller, and then the next row, the top one, on the shallower pitch, which will be our summer gain, is on the 3rd charge controller. That should work just fine for controlling the amount of power going into the batteries. That's looking pretty good. So hopefully here pretty soon we'll be getting up the panels. The gutter guy should be here, if not this week, early next week. It's Wednesday right now, so he may be here. Maybe here tomorrow. The roofer's coming back to finish up some flashing tomorrow, and the gutter guy should be out. The windows came in. I've got to go pay for the delivery guy so I can get them delivered out here, because I have about $36,000 in the windows, and I don't feel like being in charge of driving them from the store out to here, because if they break, then it's on me. If the delivery guy breaks them, it's on them. So it's well worth the $70 to have them delivered out here. So the windows are in, doors should be in anytime, the garage door should be in at any time now. Start taking shape pretty quick. But glad I got those brackets up, the rails. I'll start putting panels up once I get all the inverters and stuff wired and ready to go.